just like seeing her for the first time.
The story began with a baby spawning in a small estate. Arla Territory, the old lady who delivered the baby, told the woman, in labor with undisguised happiness, that she had a boy. Just like the landlord, the mother said that she named her child Ruin Ardell. She hopes that he will become the light of this world sometime later in the book. Holbagans, the protagonist's uncle, said that he would go to it lake to get them good seafood. The protagonist has not stood out in any way since childhood. He told his uncle not to go to the street near the South Mountain. There was a strange flow of mana there. The men did not understand his warning, however. After a while there was a strong thunderstorm. Beggins ran into the house and apologized, saying that he managed to avoid trouble because he listened to the advice of the young master because of his words yesterday. He did not go through the street of the South Mountain, and now he learned that there was an attack by beastmen. What does he think, Mabe? Ruin is able to sense the manner in the air. Father said that it was too early to judge, but if so, he would be myth. Future Ardell. At that time, the little boy was practicing his magic. From that day on, he showed more and more talent for magic. He sensed mana at he could already show it, and when he turned, he surpassed countless children and prestigious families entering the Ignite Magic Academy, the best magic academy. In Thradian Kingdom, he was declared the best among the applicants. He was enrolled as the best applicant and received the title of genius, which is not surprising at all for the protagonist. This attitude was somewhat burdensome for him, but he consoled himself with the thought that his name would raise the status of the family. However, it cannot be said that he succeeded in this. In one of the classes, the teacher told him to demonstrate his skills as the best among the applicants in the first hour of class. It became clear that he was far from the best on not even the second. While the student was desperately trying to complete the task, the teacher was shouting at him to quickly release mana. But the protagonist desperately realized that he was unable to do this. It turned out that he had a mana release disorder. He lacked the innate ability to release magic even a meter from his body for a mage. His buddy was literally the worst. It did not take long for the others to find out about his origin and his lack of magical talent. Therefore, their attitude quickly changed. So one day, while walking down the corridor, he was deliberately bumped by the shoulder of a bee-like student. The boy worriedly asked his friend if he was Sake. He had just touched a disabled person. What if he became the same? He grabbed his shoulder and said that he needed to wash himself quickly. Ruin was considered a person incapable of using magic, a defective person who can't even cast spells at the magic academy. Then, the impudent student asked him what he was staring at. With a huge smile, he raised his hand and exclaimed, "How dare an impudent person who can't use magic look at him like that?" For the envious people, his current status became the highest pleasure they could get. After that, the protagonist burst into in the bushes on his face, asking himself if he could even become a magician, a person who entered Theocotamy with the best scores, more promising anyway, more diligent than anyone else. But because of this damn curse, the genius became disabled in magic. That's how it all ended. Or rather thought that it all ended like that, because he couldn't even imagine that, according to the canons of the manga, he couldn't be a loser. Suddenly the system reported the activation of the player's artifact. The status window was unlocked. Ruin opened his eyes and became an astronaut, but he did not understand where he was. The system told him that he was the incarnation of Dorotheus, destroyer of worlds. What nonsense! Then his attention was drawn to a humanoid creature times larger than himself. He thinks that the creature is trying to say something. A few hours earlier, the training ground of the Ignite Academy, Heil, the professor of combat magic, announced that Ruin was next. He online needed to create a fireball and hit the scarecrow's body with it. Fireball is a magic that any student at the academy should be able to do with flying colors. But for our protagonist, this is an almost impossible task. He was overcome by doubts. Will he succeed? The professor confidently commanded him to begin. Protagonist pulled himself together and, concentrating fire energy in his hand, thought that he should not give up, must succeed at any cost. The students were amazed at the size of his magic ball, as well as the amount of his manathon. He swung his arm and thought that if he kept this up he could do it. Suddenly his body trembled, and he thought, no way. The next moment he felt sick and spat out the contents of his stomach. The professor didn't coddle Hyman, ordered him to quickly release the ball, and Ruin, whose hand was covered in fire, continued to make excuses. The professor said that he was already in his senior year. If he still couldn't perform normal magic, he would simply not pass the final exam. He would fail. Our protagonist lowered his head, believed the old man's words and accepted his fate. And then he clenched the fist of his hand and said that he would train harder in this practical shooting test. He must create fireballs and hit the target several times. He who was unable to charge even one ball into the target could not even count on the role of a third-rate magician. The students were making fun of him as always, and the protagonist thought that because the best applicant was a provincial nobleman's offspring, his peers from more families began to envy him and feel inferior. This was the reason for their hostile attitude. He can withstand their mockery, but the reality that deprives him of hope begins to destroy him from within. This damn courses the only thing that has held him back for these 6 years, although he has held up well all this time. But how much longer can he hold out? Sometime later, in the corridor of the academy, Ben Fult and his friend turned their attention to Ruin. Smiling maliciously, he said that it was time to pack their things. Doesn't he really think so in his place? He would have been embarrassed to show himself, but he turned out to be persistent. By the way, the younger ones call him Dumb Ruin. Because of him, the graduating class is not a role model. Maybe he should already get the hell back to his village. Ruin, as always, listened to their attacks on him, and then his lackey, Ben, said that since nature had deprived him of skills, he should at least be rich. But the trouble is, they are just idiots behaving arrogantly, although they have nothing. The last words touched the main character, and the fool did not have to finish, since the protagonist, with a sharp blow of his fist, hit him right in the face, causing him to fly to the Sadiru and told him to repeat what he said about his father. Ben immediately turned blue, and bleeding began to be Natho. Dare he, and so on. MC said that he should know when to stop. Who is he to say anything about his father, his family? The thug swung his fist, preparing to hit Ruin. Does he even understand who he is going against? But the main character, with a quick blow of his hand, pierced the chest of his opponent, causing him to fall to the floor. Drooling, Ben shouted at that moment, "You cheeky bastard!" He concentrated powerful energy in his hands. How dare he hit him? Ruin wondered, was he really going to use combat magic within the walls of the academy? It seemed he didn't care that he could be exposed, so Ben still directed his energy forward. He wished him dead, and the protagonist suddenly realized Dath couldn't move. At that moment, the professor ran up to them and ordered them to stop immediately. Ruin thought that his end had come, but suddenly, the system reported that he was the incarnation of Draw, the destroyer. Off-worlds, the status window is unlocked. The player's artifact is activated, being in an empty space, and looking at a huge humanoid creature. He did not understand what was happening when suddenly, the huge creature said his name, which surprised him. The next moment he tried to open his eyes, he saw an alarmed Helen, a high-class healer, in front of him, rising up on the bed. He did not understand where he was. She said that he was in the restroom. He put his hand to his head and said he felt a little dizzy, but he could sit up then. He wondered, had he passed out? The vision seemed so real. Then he asked how long he had been down there. She said almost a day, and then said it was a great blessing that nothing worse had happened. Then he asked, was he okay now? She said they needed to run a few more tests, but he looked pretty good for someone who had been hit directly by a lightning ball. No wounds, no burns, even his organs were intact. She had never seen anything like this. Ruin couldn't believe it. With is that possible? Lightning ball is a terrible magic that burns the body in seconds, and he took a direct hit. How is he completely fine at that moment? The professor entered the room. Helen, leaning towards the protagonist, said that since the professor was here, she would go further to analyze the results. She insisted that he not remain silent if something bothered him. The professor approached him and asked how he was feeling. He replied that everything was fine. He said that a professorial council was convened regarding this incident. First of all, he reports that Ben will be expelled using combat magic with the intent to kill, spreading false rumors about the head of the Ardell family, as well as unfair treatment and bullying him. All of the above actions were taken into account when making a verdict. MC said that he hit him too. Hi-Heil said that naturally he would also be punished considering the circumstances. He will be doing volunteer service for a month. Then he asked if he possessed an artifact. MC didn't understand what he was talking about, and then said that if he had something like that, he wouldn't be bullied. The professor said that, based on the value and rarity of the artifact, the head of the Ardell family would have already used it for his people. The protagonist then asked why he was asking. He was sure that babe for the lightning ball hit him. His body was surrounded by a red color. It was as if a high-ranking artifact protected him, reflecting Ben's magic. He didn't understand what artifact he was talking about, and then wondered if Ith had anything to do with that strange dream. After that, he said that he didn't understand what happened, but he was sure that he didn't have an artifact. The professor agreed with him, and then left the room, wishing him more rest. Ruin wondered what the professor was thinking about now. He thought about it, an experience indistinguishable from a dream, and that strange voice, Draw, the destroyer of worlds. And the player, it seems. There was something else, a status window, he exclaimed, in surprise. Helen heard the cry, and ran to him, and asked if everything was okay. He stared at the system window in surprise, and asked could she see it too. She didn't understand what he was talking about, because she couldn't see anything. The status window, said Ruin Ardell, is the incarnation of Draw, the destroyer of worlds. As a result of striving for unlimited power, the Draw mage died with his world for him, deprived of the ability to release mana since birth. The source of power was physical strength. Draw artifact player calling the status window, and infinitely increasing the owner's strength through tasks, stat strength, agility, wisdom. He suddenly realized that only he could see it. Then he thought that he needed to smooth over this awkward situation, and turning to Helen, he told her not to bother, and that he must have imagined it. She laughed awkwardly, and said that it wasn't funny at all, then said that his results were also normal, and he could return to the dorm. He smiled and looked at her, and thanked her for her work. Today he survived a lightning strike without any consequences, met a man with a red eye in an alternate dimension, and got a status window that only he could see. It said that he was the incarnation of Draw. Was it possible that the artifact of a mage named Draw had been passed on to him? And now another strange quest window appeared in front of him, a repeating quest body training, since he had become a player associated with Draw the Destroyer Afterworlds. He needed to prepare his body for increased strength by training. He needed to perform a punch, kick, and roundhouse times each. As a reward he would receive plus points to strength and unlock skills, he thought. How would a quest related to strength help a mage? He realized that now was not the time to hesitate. He had to try. First he exhaled and concentrated on the task at hand, then punched his fist forward. The system began to count the number of punches. He realized that the number was increasing, and at this rate, he would quickly reach the goal. Then he punched crookedly, and the system did not count the punch. He thought about how the system only counts if it was done correctly. In that case, Hugh would complete the training properly. After a while, when the full moon rose into the sky, he tried to catch his breath, and said that he had finally finished the system, announced that the task had been completed, and the reward had been received. Wiping the sweat from his face, he was interested in the reward, but suddenly he felt the power circulating in his body. Yes, that feeling. He had become truly stronger. Then he swung his fist forward, and thought that the power entering the magic had become much stronger. The speed, the air resistance, the destructive power, everything felt completely different. His fundamental power had increased. Now what about the second reward on the system window? It was written, Power Circle, passive skill. Mana circles will be replaced by power circles from now on. All magic and movement will be affected by the player's physical strength. Heasked. Does it replace mana circles with power circles? Everyone who senses and studies mana has a circle around their heart. The mana circle plays an important role in releasing ing and strengthening mana. The number of these circles increases, depending on the accumulated mana, and the amount that can be controlled. He has 4 mana circles, more than what is usually found in people his age, but due to his disorder, it is as if there are 0. His eyes widened in surprise, and he suddenly realized that the mana circles were actually gone, the madly circulating power. In their place was power circles. If the new circles do not become a full-fledged replacement, what will happen to him? Can one really forget about the light of a mage? Then he pulled himself together, and thought that it was too early to get upset. First he needed to test the circles in action. After that he put his hand forward, using a technique called fireball. Seeing the size of his fireball, he realized that this was the power of the artifact after all. He was given a unique chance since has a basic principle of operation. It takes an average of seconds to release, but the ability to skip this stage and create a fireball due to his internal power is definitely the power of the artifact.